You want to have fun at work. You want to enjoy yourself. You want to be with people that are like you.
Yeah.
They enjoy the same things as you do. They are people that you can have friends and have mentorship and have leadership, because that is so critical. Yes, you're earning a living, but understand what you truly would like to get involved in.
Most young people leave education with qualifications, but little clarity about how to get hired or build something of their own. This is Future Careers Made Clear. Practical conversations about how early careers actually take shape. So I'd like to welcome today's guest, and it's Sarah Mitchell. Hi Sarah, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yes, hello Sandra, thank you very much for the invitation. So I have been in a corporate world environment for the last 25 years, working in procurement, so predominantly working in companies that are in healthcare, they're in big pharmaceuticals, in some smaller entrepreneurial companies looking in luxury, and most recently in marketing. The types of things that I've been doing, I've worked my way up from a buyer, so buying engineering materials, that sort of thing, through to leadership of people, taking on more procurement specialisms, so around software, and then into the marketing and digital environment, so basically buying marketing services for big corporates and then leading teams of people globally, sort of big and small teams, to really delivering marketing services to corporate organisations.
Thank you. So you've got a wealth of experience you're bringing to us today, so we're looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Thank you. I know that when you're talking today, you're very much going to be talking from your own perspective. You're not representing the views of your employers in any way, so it's definitely your own opinions.
Yeah, this is everything from a personal point of view that I've gleaned working with people and working with the hiring managers and working with HR teams over the last, good few years.
Yes, brilliant. So we're talking today about helping candidates apply for entry-level roles, so very much their kind of first professional role. And I wanted basically to pick your brains about some tips to help them make the most of the process and help them succeed. So first of all, if you get a large number of CVs, how would a candidate stand out? So
typically in the corporate environment, as a hiring manager looking for somebody, you would work very much with a human resources or a talent partner. So quite often the criteria for the job is built by you as a hiring manager, and you work with the HR partner to then provide the job description and put it through the processes. But a lot of the time, the filtering of candidates is done through the HR teams, so that by the time it gets to you as a hiring manager, a lot of CVs and hiring candidates have been filtered out. So one of the key things to really make them stand out is to really start to adapt their CVs and covering letters, which people do read, to make sure they're very reflective of the job description and of the type of words that, particularly with an automated filter, having those specific words from the job description put into their application would really stand them in good stead to getting through that sort of first few layers of filtering.
Okay, so in terms of that application, it's like meeting all those kind of bare minimums is essential for you to even see the application. You're not going to see
yes, it really is. A candidate would not even get to my desk until they've actually been through that process of being filtered through. So in order to make sure that it's successful, to have the keywords and a key job description understanding, to make their CVs adapted and frankly bespoke to the job description, to really stand a good chance of getting through that really kind of that very first layer. And quite often corporate companies these days are using automated AI-based systems that would filter you out before it also gets to a human. So you've got to make sure that you're really concentrating on giving your CV the best chance to get through.
Okay, so it sounds very much like the best advice is to apply for less jobs but do better applications.
Yeah, I think so. I think if you have a very bespoke purposeful to the job description, purposeful to the way that you want to be in that corporate environment, if you can put all of that into your CV and your covering letter, because they are important still, in lots of corporate environments, they're particularly read. So if you can really make it, rather than sending out, mass submissions, which are very generic, you'll stand a much better chance of getting something if you really put the time and effort into that CV.
Brilliant, thank you. And once the candidates get as far as you, so you've kind of got the cream of the crop when they reach you, how typically would a candidate really stand out in your eyes?
So I think there's a few things. It's about seeing the personality of the person coming through. So yes, often in early roles, people don't have vast wealths of experience, and that's to be expected as a line manager. But what you are looking for is someone who's made something that stands out to you. So whether it's been personal experiences or some kind of volunteering or out of work type things that they've undertaken as a person, or just even if they haven't had paid work, if they've done volunteering or something like that, showing a breadth of experience as much as one can at an entry level really starts to show that this is a candidate who's interested, who's taken on a lot of things to really start to shape and understand the corporate world they want to enter.
Okay, and so it sounds like the candidates who are really reaching the kind of top levels are ones who've perhaps quite intentionally curated a set of experiences ready for that application.
Yes, I would say so. And it doesn't have to be anything, again, even if it's something, if you've been to university and you've taken on a role within, say, a group or a club that you've joined there, or if you've been through an apprenticeship type scheme and you've taken on extra responsibilities, or if you've even, you've worked in different roles that perhaps weren't in the corporate structure and now you want to look into a corporate role. It's taking those experiences and really highlighting them based on the culture of the organisation that you want to join, but also that corporate level.
Yeah, so it's very much a question of framing what you've done.
Very much so, yes. And that really helps to make it stand out.
Okay. And so it sounds like in terms of getting the candidate to evidence a match with the job description, the person specification, this is absolute basic stuff.
Yes, I think some of just matching of the job description will get you through the filtering layer. If you don't do that, you're very unlikely to, particularly right now with AI being so used by companies to filter these CVs and for job descriptions, it won't get you very far. You really do need to take the time to think, do I want to invest my energy into this particular company? Is there someone from a brand, values and organisational structure that I feel drawn to them? And then to put the time into creating something where you can showcase some of the things that you've done.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Are there any common mistakes you see from candidates, or do you find, again, because you're the hiring manager, you wouldn't see the common mistakes? Is that how it works?
Yes, and it's an interesting question because actually often I don't see... one could have 1,000 people applying for 3 roles or something, and you actually wouldn't see typically the people who've made mistakes because they're just filtered out. They don't actually get to fill the funnel. Sometimes CVs that then would come through to the hiring manager and to the HR partner to review. Sometimes some of the mistakes are things like actually the personality of the person doesn't necessarily come through. So it's very focused on, maybe perhaps they're very focused on their academic side, or but they neglect maybe to bring in some of the extracurricular things they've done, or maybe if their academic record was a few years ago, they sort of forget to tell us about things about the academic side and then focus in on maybe smaller things. So it's almost like finding the right balance. Again, when you don't have huge amounts of experience, make the most of what you do have.
Thank you. And it sounds like actually personality really matters to actually make yourself stand out. And so if you're just so focused on the job description, the person spec, it would be very easy to forget to put your personality in.
Definitely. And again, that's once you're past those filtering layers, that's what really starts to bring a candidate to life before you even meet them. Can you get a sense of them? And, I do want to assure people that once you, certainly my own experience as a hiring manager over many years, you take the time to read them. You take the time to read the CVs, you take the time to read the covering letters, and think about what that conjures for you as a person, and then start to shortlist on that basis.
And I guess on a very personal level, you're thinking about, is this a person I want in my team?
Yes, absolutely. Is this a person I could have in my team? Is this someone who would fit in our culture? And again, don't forget, recruitment for a company is an expensive business. What you really want to do is bring in the right people at the right time, and then have a clear career path set out for those people, to keep them into the company for a long time. Because it is an expensive business, you don't want to keep repeating that. And also the stability that you get by being able to nurture talent and grow it from within is very rewarding as an organisation. And you just keep your churn numbers down. So, financially it makes sense.
Yeah, and I think it's very reassuring for me to hear that you are thinking about these candidates in a long term. How can we grow and develop these people?
Definitely.
Rather than just, we need something done now.
No, I think every organisation I've ever worked in, from a smaller one right to the very large corporates globally, it's always about, can we bring the right people in and how do we grow their potential?
Thank you. So let's move on to the kind of nitty-gritty of applications. So candidates are always advised to use the STAR framework. So situation, task, action and result. So how might a young person who's not had a job before use that framework effectively?
So I think that's, again, back to understanding what experiences you've had. Have you been involved in a club? Have you been involved in doing something perhaps even extra at school? It doesn't even have to be outside of that. You could maybe take on responsibility in a classroom, or you could have helped one of your friends, maybe perhaps with homework. Or I know it sounds like a very straightforward example, but even something like that you can learn from. You can show as an example of your personality, the types of things that you have been good at doing. We often find as well that, frankly, there is so much competition that these days younger people do really need to look at, where are my interests? Where are the things I could be doing outside of academic work? Are there volunteering opportunities? Is there something I could do in my spare time that could then create an example? As you're doing it for enjoyment, but then you have these examples and that you're able to bring them to a CV, and also, more importantly, when you're in the room, to actually talk about them.
And that's quite interesting, just kind of touching on academics versus those broader activities that build your personality and your character. So I don't know whether you can answer this or not. If you were looking at two candidates with similar academic profiles and one is just slightly above the other in terms of the academics, would the academics swing it, or would it be that whole person character type of stuff?
So speaking personally, I'd want to see that candidate and see how their personality fits, and how whether what they've said on paper really matches up to them as an individual, and how I would see them fit in the company. Because academic prowess is an important part of the CV in a corporate world, but it's not everything. It's about that rounded personality. It's what else can this person bring on top of what they have. So I wouldn't say, as I say, from my own experience, it's not drawn me one way or another. I'd want to see the right people in the room for the interview.
Okay, thank you. And so, again, thinking back to the STAR framework, to what extent does the candidate really need to evidence outcomes and impact?
Well, I think that's very critical. I think for the interviews to go well, you're building on what you've presented to the organisation. So that's your CV and your covering letter, and potentially then you start to move through, particularly for a lot of graduate schemes or a lot of apprenticeship schemes, you go through a very formed up process. So there's lots of steps. But what you're doing each time is you're bringing those outcomes that you've had in your life to life for the people that you're meeting all around you. So using that structure means you can communicate very clearly in a really kind of concise but still expressing the experiences, but a really kind of put together way of bringing yourself forward. And if you're using the STAR framework particularly, it's also really important that you're reflecting on, so these are the experiences I've had. You describe them, you explain them to the interviewers, but then reflecting on what's the aftermath to you, you know, how has that positively impacted you, and how do you use those experiences in your life going forward? And that's again about that kind of seeing the personality, but seeing the growth of that individual through that technique.
And that sounds like that's very much showing their future potential.
Very much so, because the fact that you stop and think about, it's not just something that's happened and you put away, it's something that you've learned from, or that you've built on as a skill, and that you continue to grow with. And it demonstrates that capacity for understanding yourself, your feedback from others perhaps in such situations, and also just to see that continuous learning approach to life, really.
Makes a lot of sense, and with such a changing world, it's essential. Thinking about cultural fit then, so you can train, you know, most people you can train skills, you can train knowledge, but cultural fit is a tricky one. You can't force someone to kind of have alignment with the values of an organisation. So how important is cultural fit and values alignment when you're recruiting?
I think it's very important. For everybody's success, you know, the job interview process is the very first step in your what should hopefully be a career path with that organisation. And if you don't have cultural alignment, then the employee that's been brought in isn't going to feel comfortable and cannot really deliver to their potential, and the organisation can't see the potential delivered from it, because if you don't have aligned cultural fit, and not just, I say I have it, but actually if you genuinely don't have a fit with them, they're probably not an organisation you should pursue, because you spend a lot of time at work, you have to work jolly hard, and part of that is understanding that you're contributing to the mission and values of that organisation. And if you're not on board with that, it's really not very comfortable. And that's partly why I think particularly corporate organisations do take the time to do a number of steps in recruitment process to make sure that the resilience of that person is really there and their potential is there, because it has to be the right fit. Okay,
so it sounds very much like when you're writing an application, the alignment of values and the demonstrating that you're aligning with the culture and values of the organisation is very important. But if you're feeling like you're having to kind of be, I guess, not authentic to yourself, then perhaps that's a red flag at the application stage.
I would say so, because if you're feeling like you're having to almost change your personality or change a lot about what you truly believe in to undertake the role, that perhaps they aren't the right organisation for you. Absolutely, everybody learns and grows, and fitting into a corporate structure, that is different to different, you know, every type of company that you'd work for has at their heart the brand and the corporate values. And if you have to change too much, that's not going to be a good fit, and you're going to be probably worn out by doing that. So maybe try to really hone in on where are the industries, where are the companies with the cultures that I feel I can really contribute to, and that would contribute to me as a person.
Okay, and it's interesting you've touched on brand there. I'm interested just to talk a little bit about how the presentation, when someone comes to work for you,
yes,
what's important in terms of the way they dress or the way they behave, in line with the brand?
Yeah, so I think particularly in the corporate world, but one hopes everywhere, we're very careful around ensuring that discrimination doesn't occur and that bias doesn't occur in particularly in recruitment, but just generally in an organisation, in a culture that respects and values its employees. Having said that, there are brand ideals and brand guidelines around how organisations, so particularly when I was working in big pharma or healthcare, particularly when you're meeting medical professionals or you're meeting people in a clinical setting, you need to look business smart professional to convey the values of the corporation as part of the understanding that that's what's part of your job. So if you feel that a dress code in an organisation would not be something you'd be comfortable to do, and you feel very strongly about that, then again, that's probably another red flag to say, this probably isn't the organisation for me, because there is an expectation that whilst respecting individuals' ability to deliver the role, there is still guidelines as a community of people in a company that you all undertake to deliver together.
Thank you. And it's interesting you're highlighting effectively red flags for the candidate when they think about applying, as well as potential red flags for the employer.
Yes, because this is a two-way process, to get the best, as I said, to get the best out of people. You want motivated folks to come and join you as an organisation, and likewise you need to be motivated and understand that the values of the company that you're going to work for are ones that you want to work hard to deliver against.
Yeah, because it's a big part of your life.
It's a massive part. You're at work a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And you meet lots of different people in that organisation, but again, you're all working for the common goal.
Thank you. Let's have a think about interviews. So quite often in an interview, they might start with, tell me about yourself. How does one answer that?
Yes. Well, again, so speaking as a hiring manager,
yes.
The way that when I sort of say, well, tell me about yourself, what I'm really looking for is someone to take the cue that actually you are presenting yourself with a bit of your backstory about where you've come from, what your experiences have been, but always telling me about myself in the context of this company and in this brand and in the ideal values of this organisation. So a really wacky example is if you're working for, I don't know, a shoe manufacturer, and you say, oh, I spend all my time, scuffing my shoes along the floor. That's probably not the brand ambassadorship they're looking for when they say, tell me about yourself. What you really want to be saying is, well, I really enjoy wearing shoes, and, I look after my shoes, and I find that this is something that really is interesting to me. You take the point. I mean, it's a silly example, but it's also about being relatively concise. So one of the key things that candidates often do is overshare they spend too long talking,
so they don't know when to stop.
No, and this is the thing. There's a good, and it's practice, honestly, knowing when to share, to speak, and then to just gently pause and then wait for the next question. And that's also where the tell me about yourself is designed to make you relax. You can talk about that subject. No one's asking you tricky questions. You can talk about yourself a lot, but again, it's don't go too far. Learn, okay, I've done my bit, wait for the next question.
Perfect. And just jumping to the very far end of a typical interview, the questions. What can you tell me about the questions?
Oh, well, the questions. So that also, even again, if you have limited experience, doesn't matter, you have experiences to share. So you must then obviously want to know about the company and know about what's going to be happening about the day job and what's going to be, this is a two-way process. So think of good questions to ask that reflect what you really want to know about. Not things that you could find like what the pay structure is or whatever, but things about the culture. Would I fit here well? Could I ask the right questions of these people to get a sense of what it would be like to work alongside them? And, and that is exactly what the interviewers are trying to understand when they're asking you, star-based, competency-based questions. Will this person fit? Can we get the best out of them? Are we going to work well together?
Thank you. So let's imagine the young person has got the job at your company. Skills England have recently brought out something called the Standard Skills Classification, which has 13 core skills which apply to all jobs. Obviously, some are more important, some are less important, depending on the role. So we've got planning and organising, adapting, working with others, listening, speaking, leadership, learning and investigating, creating and innovating, problem solving, numeracy, digital literacy, reading and writing. So there's a lot of things.
There's a lot of them.
And so I was just wondering, from your perspective, which of those core skills are really important to you as an employer?
So again, based on some of the successful candidates that have come into my organisations or indeed to my teams. Adaptability, agility, that was one of them, wasn't it?
Adapting. And resilience.
So having resilience, that's actually, particularly in today's world when everything change is the only constant. So having that ability to adapt is really important. And whether that's in small ways, so people are looking for maybe changing processes, or they're changing things that, you may have learned last week to do it this way, and actually, next week you need to do it a different way. And having the ability to kind of work with that is really important. But also being resilient, because again, work is tiring. There's lots of mental challenge. There's lots of interest. There's lots of exciting projects, and it's having that ability to kind of go, I'm going to get on with this. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to achieve something and set realistic goals for yourself, and being resilient if things don't quite go the right way. And that in itself, as a sort of scene in a corporate environment, is so important, because often companies will change direction, or projects will start, then they'll stop, they'll pivot. So you just being resilient about yourself and about what you're achieving is really critical. The other thing I think allied to that is active listening, not just listening, but active listening. So sometimes we find that people are particularly enthusiastic, perhaps, and want to be sharing, or if they're asked questions, they typically share a lot. But actually, learning from your peers around you, or your leadership, or a broad project team, listening to those people, asking really useful questions, and then waiting and listening and hearing the answers. Reflecting on those answers and seeing how much you can learn as an individual from all the people around you is so positive, because yes, we're always terribly enthusiastic, particularly starting something new, but learning from people who are there is really important.
And that's really interesting, because that's quite different from the experience that young people have had in school or at university or college, where quite often the teacher is asking them a direct question and wants them to share a lot. And you're actually talking about going in, when you're going in at the sort of junior level in an organisation, being quite humble about the fact you need to learn, you need to listen.
Yes, I think so. But actually active listening goes through the entire organisation. The CEO of an organisation, she or he will, or they will listen to their business. There's always something new you can learn, no matter what point of your career in. So I think that as a literally career-long skill is something to really cultivate.
Yeah, and I think there's also the thing, particularly as you become more senior, if you want to actually know what's going on at the coalface, so to speak, where the actual the practical work is being done, you have to listen to people within your organisation, because as a senior leader, you're not seeing those things on a day-to-day level in quite the same way. You
don't stay connected unless you do listen. Yeah, and I think allied to that, what was the other one you said?
We talked about working with others.
Working with others. So I think. Again, part of the active listening is to do that, but also taking opportunities to work with different types of folks. And again, traditionally, if you've coming out of school or coming out of some kind of educational setting, typically you're working with people that are relatively close to you in age. It's actually working with teams that could be made up with people that are very advanced in their careers, in the middle of their careers. They could be working reduced hours, they could be working different types of patterns. And I would say learning to work with different types of folks. I'm very fortunate to have worked pretty much in global organisations. So I work with people literally from across the globe, sometimes at different times of the day, but to understand people's cultures and have the opportunity to learn from them as well. And I think that really is part of the journey, is that there's always something new to learn, and by working with different types of people, you can gain those skills, and it can only grow as an individual. And again, yes, sometimes it's hard work, and yes, in a corporate environment you're not going to get on with absolutely everybody, it's not possible, but that doesn't mean that you can't be respectful and understand what you might learn from them, even if it's actually don't do that, don't do it that way, do it a different way. That's still a good learning. So working with different teams, really listening and absorbing, and having that kind of adaptability and growth mindset that you really can't go wrong with.
Perfect. Now, I'm just wondering actually whether you've had any experience of reverse mentoring, because that's more popular these days, where someone junior mentors someone more senior in the organisation.
Yes, so several organisations that I've worked in have had what they would call servant leadership. So quite often you will have a more junior member of the team mentoring somebody who's more senior, partly to stay connected. So back to your point around what's actually happening at a very grassroots level, but also about how are people coming across? How are they meeting? If you're a senior leader, you need to reach your communication to everybody that works with you, works for you, works alongside you. And if you aren't connected into those folks, how can you make sure your communication's reaching everybody? So that's been quite a useful piece. Plus, of course, there is also, with sort of the reverse mentorship, what you get is that growth of two-way connections, so communication skills improve. So the person who's doing the mentoring starts to learn new skills, particularly when they're talking to somebody perhaps more senior. And then that person, again, likewise, can help shape that. It's almost like a symbiosis of it, really, because then you start to share more feedbacks with someone because you know them better when they're doing that. So again, there's growth on both sides. So it's usually quite a helpful thing. And quite a lot of cultures encourage it in corporate environments because, again, you don't want the disconnection of ideas to get lost between the very top and the very bottom.
Yeah. Really interesting. Thank you. Just thinking about networking, and sometimes people worry that if they don't know people in the right organisation, it's going to be very tricky for them to access a role in that organisation. So I'm thinking from an employer's perspective, are you more likely to hire someone you know or someone who's being referred to you?
So I think that it's important that, certainly from my own experience in the corporates that I've worked in, is that whilst referrals are useful, and in some companies, if you refer someone in for a role and they get hired, there's a financial bonus to do that. And if you have had people who've come into the organisation and perhaps done some shadowing or work experience, or they've done internships for periods of time, you know that person. And then you might suggest they go forward for a role. But genuinely, within corporate hiring mechanisms, again, back to that point that we spoke about earlier, there's a really clear process. There's a whole layer of HR vetting that goes on before they even reach you as a hiring manager. So it is not... you still would always go through that, what I would consider to be a very neutral process. Yes, your experiences might stand you in good stead to reach the top of the pile to be seen. And yes, the fact you've been referred or you've, somebody within the organisation is aware of you, that helps you, again, to get into that pile. But ultimately, the neutrality of that process means that everybody should have an equal go. As long as you can meet the needs of the job description and that you fulfil the criterion, you should be able to be selected without any kind of bias towards that, nepotistic behaviour or anything like that.
And of course, that's HR are there very much to ensure that the laws are followed.
Absolutely. And again, back to that discriminatory process, that is why our talent teams work so hard to make sure they get the right people to be seen to deliver these roles for the organisation.
Thank you. So let's think about once you've actually hired someone who's new. So I'm just interested to know a little more about how someone might really thrive and progress in the sort of, say, the first 6 to 12 months in a role.
So I think some of that goes back to the points that we mentioned earlier about the adaptability, the communication and listening, and then working with people. But I think it's also about being open to the new experiences. And again, people do work jolly hard, and to get on, taking on things that might be outside of the job. Or, I don't know, typically with graduates that have come in more recently, asking them to take on extra jobs like tracking savings, or making sure that some of the methodologies of savings are communicated with finance, or, you know, just taking on little jobs, really, hobby jobs, as I would call them, because that broadens your experience and it allows you to show your motivation and your willingness to do what's outside of the day job. So going the extra mile.
Yeah.
I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it really, really counts. And it does show you the candidates that come in and then almost do the job. Brilliant. But if then you've got people who are motivated, they're showing their enthusiasm by taking on more, those are the folks that you want to really encourage in their development to really, and you can see that where their potential starts to shine.
So it becomes almost a virtuous circle.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that, again, of course you would support everybody coming in, but it is really the people that want to do well and want to help and to kind of grow that get those opportunities to take their potential forward. And the other thing you see as well, quite consistently, I mean, I mentor quite a lot of folks that I've worked with even back to my very first job, in the mists of time, and it's that almost understanding that the day job is the tick. It's what else can they do? What else can they deliver? What skills have they got they bring to that organisation? And that gets noticed. And, just doing those things, it doesn't have to be all the time, but just doing those things to broaden your experiences, take on different trainings, take on different roles. In that first 6 to 12 months, you can really see if they're doing that, you see that the career projection will carry on and they'll become more senior and take on new roles, and quite often into leadership. And
it sounds like, as well as the kind of motivation to do the extra, it sounds like kind of an understanding that all business is about people, really.
Yes.
You work with people, you need to help people.
You do, and I think that it's, again, one of the critical things, and it won't come straight away, and it does take practice, but networking within the organisation, understanding, I've got a problem. Who do I ring? Who do I email? Who can help me solve my problem? And likewise, if somebody else has got an issue or something that's not quite right, how can I be the one they want to pull in to call me to say, can you do this? Can you help me? And that starts to, as you grow that, you sort of almost, your reputation spreads. And again, corporates will always have an annual appraisal process, but when you're being talked about in a room, I know so-and-so, that person's done this, or, oh yes, this person was doing this. And that's how the reputation of, what else have we got that we can give them? And that's genuinely how these things really your potential starts to become known in a wider circle.
And this sounds like it's very much going that extra 10 or 20% is what gets you noticed, because everyone is expected to do their job. Mm-hmm. And obviously this process is in place to ensure that is what happens. So if you want to stand out, just need to do that bit extra.
You do. And again, it's particularly, I'd hope that the enthusiasm of starting a new career and starting in a new organisation motivates you want to do that. But honestly, yes, it really makes a difference.
Thank you. And so I'm just thinking now, some of our viewers are parents, and just interesting to think about the parents' perspective. So I know you have 2 children who are in their early 20s, for example. How do you think parents can support their children, their young people, in understanding employment and the employer's perspective?
I think it's about understanding, first of all, that the demands on the young people are much greater. That perhaps I don't know how, age way, when I started, things were not as expected as they are now. And that there is a lot more competition globally for roles, that perhaps people aren't considering that. So as parents, I think you can try and help to demystify a bit of that process, but ultimately there's only so far a young adult is going to want to let you as a parent. So it's about providing that sort of supported environment for sort of sharing of ideas and helping to kind of remind the young people that, work is tough and you do need to sort of give a bit of an extra mile. And I think then you get to the point where, like, you look at outside influences like yourself or other people that can support and say, actually, this isn't just the parents saying this is what the reality is of work, and so how do we help them get the experiences they need to get a leg up into, being more visible and getting their enthusiasm channeled in a way that's going to get them noticed.
Okay, so there's kind of two parts to this. Is helping them curate the skills and experiences they need to get the job. But also I'm kind of hearing, I think you're saying, once they're in the job, actually kind of a bit of support along the lines of, yes, work is tough.
Yes.
Yes, this situation is quite a normal thing. This is how you might deal with it. So a little bit of gentle mentoring once they're in the role to keep them in the role.
Yes, I think so. And just that almost check and balance to say, actually, no, carry on. This is normal. This is fine. It's all going to be good, because it is such a change from an educational setting into the world of work, and that sense of needing to become, almost fully functioning. You just need a bit of a support around them, whatever they're doing, whether it's, even if they're doing internships, things like this, just to curate their experiences, that in itself will be tough. So yeah, as a parent, and you can only just sort of be there and be that guiding, like when they need that gentle support, because otherwise I think it all feels very overwhelming. And it really doesn't need to be, because it is normal, and you can just reassure them.
Yeah, and I think perhaps if you can't do that yourself, you might know someone, perhaps an uncle or a friend who can support similarly.
Yes, and it might be somebody that could even be something like, a club leader, or somebody that if they're in somewhere where they have someone else who's a trusted adult, it's that person helping just to support and say it as well, that it is, don't worry, everything's fine. You do need that support, because ultimately you do want the young people to have those advantages, to be able to feel they can get these experiences to make them stand out, because it is so competitive.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. Thank you. Well, we're running towards the end of our time now, so I've got a couple of final questions for you. First of all, what one piece of advice would you give to a young person trying to secure an entry-level job today?
Wow, one.
What would be the key thing?
I would say really try to work out where your skills and interests lie, because you're at work a lot. So find a role, or find some key parts of a company, particularly corporates. Find something that really interests you, and that you've had experiences that you can really bring your potential to that organisation, because you want to have fun at work, you want to enjoy yourself, you want to be with people that are like you.
Yeah.
They enjoy the same things as you do. They are people that you can have friends and have mentorship and have leadership, because that is so critical. Yes, you're earning a living, but understand what you truly would like to get involved in.
Because actually you're probably going to spend more time with your colleagues than with your family or your friends.
You sure are. Yes, you are.
It does matter.
It really matters. And that would be my one piece of advice. I really do think that's important. And then, because then your enthusiasm for whatever it is that you like, there'll be a job out there in a corporate world that you can find to harness what you like.
Yeah, so it's just finding the right job.
Yeah. And and as part of that is do the research. I know you said one thing, but that would be my slight add.
What big decision has most shaped your career, and why?
Goodness. Well, I think I have to go back to my dad took me to the office when I was in my teenage years, and he took me to the office and he showed me the office, and he said, this is what procurement's all about. And that sparked my interest. And that was really because he took the time to show me what he did. And I got a chance to be in the office and do, what was relatively simple work, but just to understand what that job entailed, and I enjoyed it so much I thought, right, that's it, that's my career. So it for me, that really has shaped everything I've done. And I've worked in lots of different corporates and lots of different sectors, and very briefly in sales, which wasn't for me. Plenty of people love it, but just wasn't for me. I've been in procurement all my career and leading teams of people to deliver value to the bottom line of a company. And that really is what I enjoy. So yeah, that shaped it really.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually, because it comes back to the whole thing of you can't be what you can't see, and the importance of as many different workplace exposures as you can get when you're young. Because you're never going to decide to be something where you don't know what it is, or what it entails.
And you go and experience things and you think, that's definitely not for me. You know, isn't that's a positive thing too? Because, you know, you just need to find the things that really you could see yourself in, you know, 2, 3, 5, 10, 15, 25, who knows? Years. You know, there's so many pivots on careers these days. Lots of people take skills that they've learnt in one stage of their career and take them to another stage. But when you're really starting off, get as much experience or shadowing or anything you can to really see what that job looks like.
Brilliant. And finally, what's next for you career-wise? You've had a long and industrious career.
Ooh.
What's next?
Well, it's not over yet.
Well, no, indeed.
So I'm very fortunate to be just consolidating in a different sector, so working predominantly across advertising. I think for me, it's about what I enjoy best is growing a team, upskilling a team, understanding what transformation I can help to bring to the business, and then again growing that going forward. So you know, who knows what opportunities will be coming, but I'm always looking for the chance to learn about myself and learn about what I can deliver. So yes, watch this space.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. I really appreciate your time today.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra.